Hillary Clinton, of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
I believe he knows.
There are days when Hillary seems like a sensible Midwestern Methodist who grew up Republican in a suburb outside Chicago. That's the biographically accurate Hillary Clinton. But it's hardly the only Hillary Clinton. During the years she spent in Arkansas, for example, Hillary often played the loyal daughter of the American South, a Southern fried Dixie lady with a spunky feminist twist. That was the character she was portraying when we first met her 30 years ago this month. It was during the 1992 presidential primaries. Listen to her accent here.
You know, I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette. I'm sitting here because I love him and I respect him and I honor what he's been.
Watching this political takedown one time just isn't enough. It's like a heavyweight title fight. You end up replaying the best moments over and over again. Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly didn't walk into the spotlight playing it safe. They came in sharp, confident, and completely in control. And by the end of it all, Hillary Clinton's polished public image looked completely shattered, torn apart, exposed, and missing the carefully hidden secrets behind the curtain. This wasn't just criticism. It was a full-blown political destruction from start to finish.
This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract her.
Attention, that just happened to Hillary Clinton. She's got a brand new job. Who would hire Hillary Clinton? Honestly, well, Columbia University would. Columbia University has now made Hillary Clinton a presidential fellow and, quote, professor of international relations. Now, what does Hillary Clinton know about international relations that qualifies her to be professor of it at an august Ivy League university or crypto Ivy League university? Well, unlike most professors at Columbia, she destroyed an entire country, a whole country. She wrecked the nation of Libya, which is a real country in North Africa. She killed the guy who ran it for no reason whatsoever. Now they have slave markets in downtown Tripoli.
If you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel. Hillary Clinton's political career has felt like a never-ending TV drama, even while viewers keep asking for the show to finally end. Every new chapter seems to bring back the same familiar stories. The emails, the controversial overseas deals, and the paid speeches worth more than what some small countries make in a year. And somehow, she still acts shocked whenever those topics are brought up again. At this point, it almost feels like the entire political spotlight is built around another Hillary comeback tour, featuring the exact same talking points she's been repeating for years.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Wallace and J.D. Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how dumb the Trump administration.
Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly definitely weren't about to let any of that slide. They pushed past the polished headlines and exposed what they saw as excuse after excuse. Piece by piece, they chipped away at Hillary Clinton's carefully managed public image until it looked completely torn apart. Their criticism starts with her years at the State Department, a time many people viewed as pure political theater. On the surface, it looked polished and successful, but behind the scenes, the amount of controversy and confusion was enough to fill an entire highlight reel of political disasters.
How dare she? She puts out this tweet, and it's a picture of her, a much younger Hillary, and the caption on the hat reads, "But her emails." And she writes in her tweet, "Bringing this back in light of recent news. Get a limited edition But Her Emails hat and support Onward Together groups working to strengthen our democracy."
You're running this company, you get attacked in public, you become a prop in the Hillary Clinton campaign. The media, as always, on cue, aligns their coverage with her propaganda priorities. They're sort of a seamless unit, the Hillary campaign, CBS News, NBC, Shep Smith. But your job at that point is to sort of bow your head and say, busted.
Take Libya as an example. At the time, it was promoted as a major humanitarian success story. But in the end, the region was left unstable and falling apart under the weight of a failed political gamble. What was presented as a carefully planned strategy started collapsing the moment the cameras moved on, almost like a cheap prop breaking under pressure. And when the consequences finally caught up, Hillary Clinton shifted her position so fast it practically left the entire press room stunned.
Mrs. Clinton, when she mentioned a phrase about you, I don't want to repeat it.
Oh, you're not going to hurt my feelings, don't worry.
She called this gentleman, this honorable gentleman, that he is playing the role of a... You say it.
I didn't see it.
What does that tell you about Tucker Carlson and right-wing media and also Vladimir Putin?
Well, it shows me what I think we've all known. He's what's called a useful idiot.
She said the useful idiot. You didn't...
She's a child. I don't listen to her.
No.
How's Libya doing?
No.
The Clinton Foundation became another major source of controversy, especially as foreign donations seemed to pour in right when Hillary Clinton held significant political influence. To critics, the timing looked almost too perfect, like every contribution had been carefully planned behind the scenes. Yet every donation was publicly welcomed with smiles and handshakes, while concerns about possible conflicts were quickly dismissed. In the Clinton world, accusations of wrongdoing are often treated as nothing more than political attacks or simple misunderstandings.
What role did Hillary Clinton, then Hillary Rodham, play in Watergate?
Well, there's a book. The book is called The Crime Without Honor, The Crimes of Camelot and the Fall of Richard Nixon, written in the 1990s by the former chief counsel of the House Judiciary Committee. And he describes terrible things about Hillary.
Megyn Kelly isn't holding back when it comes to challenging Hillary Clinton's public image either. She argues that Hillary's political brand has been polished so heavily it feels more like a carefully protected exhibit where the most controversial details are quietly left out of the story. Even while presenting herself as a champion of everyday Americans, Hillary often appeared surrounded by wealthy elites discussing how to relate to working-class voters. To critics, the disconnect felt impossible to ignore. Her 2016 campaign became another major example. Many saw it as a mix of overconfidence and poor political strategy. Instead of focusing heavily on key swing states, her campaign spent valuable time and money assuming certain victories were already locked in. Tucker Carlson also revisits the email controversy, arguing that what should have been handled as a serious security issue turned into a political disaster that raised even more questions about judgment and accountability after decades in public office.
She calls the Trump administration hypocritical, dangerous, and dumb over this story. It's not the hypocrisy that bothers me. It's the stupidity. We're all shocked that President Trump and his team don't actually care about protecting classified information or federal record retention laws. I mean, this is so rich given her history. What's much worse is that top Trump administration officials put our troops in jeopardy by sharing military plans on a commercial messaging app and unwittingly invited a journalist into the chat. That's dangerous.
Her usual defense was that things weren't as serious politically as critics claimed, almost like saying a major disaster didn't really matter in the end. But the email issue was only one part of a broader set of concerns. What really stood out, according to critics, was the perceived pattern, where rules seemed to be stretched or reinterpreted until they barely resembled what they were meant to be. Megyn Kelly also points to claims of double standards, arguing that other politicians might have faced far harsher scrutiny for similar mistakes, while Hillary was often portrayed in a more sympathetic or intellectual light by parts of the media. From that perspective, coverage sometimes appeared uneven, with controversies quickly reframed or moved past rather than fully examined. There's also criticism of how responsibility was handled, with opponents saying she tended to deflect blame towards circumstances or others rather than fully owning outcomes. Supporters, however, would argue this is typical political defense in a highly charged environment, where narratives are constantly being contested and reshaped.
Legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian asset. And they banked on the intel agencies working with her to perpetuate this lie, and it appears they were only too happy to assist. That's what this scandal's about. Pieces of it we knew, New pieces are coming in by the day thanks to these declassifications. And
the criticism doesn't end with Libya, as opponents argue her broader foreign policy record raises additional questions. During her time in office, some have pointed to a perceived overlap between foreign policy relationships and donations to the Clinton Foundation, which critics describe as suspicious timing, though supporters maintain there was no proven wrongdoing and call such claims unfounded. Megyn Kelly and others also highlight her high speaking fees after leaving office, arguing that the amounts charged to major banks and corporations stood in contrast to the public issues she often spoke about. Critics frame this as ironic, while supporters view it as standard practice for high-profile former officials in the private speaking circuit. In terms of public image, Hillary Clinton's approach is often described as highly managed and strategic, with careful attention to messaging, appearances, and presentation. Critics say this created a sense of distance between her and everyday voters, making interactions feel overly controlled or scripted. Supporters, on the other hand, argue that this level of discipline is normal in modern politics, where media scrutiny leaves little room for spontaneity.
Not only did they not dismiss the bullshit coming into them from Hillary's operatives, but they doubled down and they opened up an investigation into Trump and his campaign and started arresting people and using the Hillary-generated information like the Steele dossier and more. You know, you heard Erin Mate explain she had this CrowdStrike group that suggested it was the Russians who had hacked the DNC. They took that hook, line, and sinker and so on. So this shit's crazy.
The idea of inevitable destiny kept coming up throughout the critique, as if the presidency were something already written into a political script rather than earned through a contest. Critics argue that her campaign and some of her supporters gave off that sense of entitlement, treating victory as something expected rather than something that needed to be won. From that perspective, her biggest weakness was seen as an overconfidence that distanced her from voices that prioritized blunt honesty over polished messaging. By the time the momentum of the 2016 race shifted, critics say the campaign had already lost its footing. After the election, her continued public defenses only intensified the debate. Interviews, speeches, and book tours were viewed by critics as attempts to reframe the outcome and reshape the narrative. Supporters would argue they were simply reflections and explanations of a complex political loss, but opponents felt the same arguments were being repeated without fully acknowledging mistakes. Even so, she has continued to present herself as a defender of everyday people, despite a record that critics say often didn't align with that image.
What's Hillary Clinton like? You're probably the only person in this room who would know.
It wouldn't surprise you to know that she's not too fond of me.
She hates you like the devil hates holy water.
So, when I resigned as vice chair of the DNC in 2016, specifically so that I could campaign against Hillary Clinton in that Democratic...
She often spoke with the voice of a reformer, but critics argue that when it came time to govern, her decisions tended to align more closely with establishment politics than with outsider change. Tucker Carlson didn't only focus on policy disagreements, he also commented on her communication style. The measured tone, the deliberate pauses, and the lawyer-like delivery were often described as overly controlled, as if every word had been carefully rehearsed in advance. To critics, that level of polish came at a cost. Instead of feeling natural or spontaneous, her public speaking could feel distant and overly scripted, more like a prepared statement than a conversation. They compare it to something technically flawless but lacking warmth or authenticity. Even today, discussions about a possible political return continue to surface from time to time, and each time, reactions from the public tend to be strong and divided. Still, she remains a constant figure in political conversation, with ongoing speculation helping keep her presence in the spotlight.
Think of Hillary Clinton as America's national tattoo remover. She alone can erase the stain of our youthful bad judgment. God bless that woman. But wait a second, you say. Hillary can't win. She's yesterday's candidate. This country's got a short attention span. We want the new thing. And Hillary Clinton isn't new. She's been around forever.
Tucker framed her legacy as an example of political ambition pushed to its limits, arguing that the pursuit of power eventually overshadowed the original purpose of public service. In that view, her career reflected strong drive but limited self-awareness about how she was perceived by voters. Critics point out that despite having major advantages, experience, connections, and long-standing influence, she often struggled to connect with everyday people in a way that felt natural or relatable. Supporters, however, would argue that political communication at that level is always filtered through strategy and media pressure. The critique then returns to what opponents see as contradictions in her approach, a mix of careful calculation and controversial missteps that shaped different phases of her political life. From her early years as First Lady to her later role in shaping Democratic Party strategy, critics argue there is a long record of decisions they view as inconsistent or poorly judged, even if they were made with confidence and intent.
And this is a document produced with federal money?
Oh, absolutely, without question. I don't know that they paid them, but Hillary's trips back and all the communications.
But it's part of it. It's part of the judicial system. It's part of our justice system.
Well, yes, but this is the impeachment inquiry by the House.
Of course, but so this is not some freelance project.
Oh no. This is
but they suppress it.
Surely. And it never comes up. We decided it wouldn't be helpful for them to see this stuff. That's what Rodino.
Her public image has often been described as carefully polished, sophisticated, controlled, and presented in a way that leaves little to chance. Critics argue that this level of refinement sometimes creates a gap between the image and the public's perception, raising questions about what lies beneath the messaging. Supporters, however, see a long record of experience and resilience, pointing out that political life at that level is always highly managed and scrutinized. Still, controversy has followed different stages of her career, and each episode has been interpreted in sharply different ways depending on political perspective. Her speaking engagements and work after holding office have also drawn attention, with critics questioning the high fees charged by major institutions, while others view them as standard for someone with her background and global profile. Throughout her career, she has been portrayed in contrasting ways, as a dedicated public servant with decades of experience, and at the same time, as a figure often surrounded by elite networks and establishment politics. These opposing narratives have shaped much of the public debate around her. What stands out most is her continued presence in American politics and media. Despite repeated controversies and setbacks, she has remained a consistent figure in public discourse, through interviews, speeches, and commentary. For supporters, that persistence reflects durability and experience. For critics, it reflects an ongoing ability to stay relevant in a highly competitive political landscape.